Hi, everyone. I'd like to do a shout out to our sponsor, Baco Diagnostics. Early detection is the single most important factor in improving patient outcomes. The Baco Diagnostics team recognizes how impactful a podiatric physician can be and remains committed to supporting you in your role as the first line of defense in diagnosing conditions of the lower extremity. Thanks to the unwavering support of their clients, Baco Diagnostics has been able to give back to the podiatric community for 16 years by providing podiatric educational resources and advocating for the position. Baco Diagnostics, helping podiatric physicians keep America on its feet. If you have not yet had the opportunity to utilize Baco Diagnostics services, get started today by sending an email to corporaterelations@bacodiagnostics.com. The first 50 podiatry offices who request a starter kit will receive a Dean's Chat mug. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. Once again, I am with my co-host, Dr. Joanna Ritchie. How you doing, Joe?
Hey, Jeff. I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Busy week last week with the residency fair and all the visitors from around the country. You recovering?
Oh, man, we had so much fun. Yeah, it was so awesome. And I have to say, I'm going to do that shameless plug for our students. Our students were remarkable. They were just spot on during their case-based learning with our guest faculty. And everyone had a great time. They got great feedback from the guests. We had Dr. King and Dr. Gumbener come out. Dr. Schuberth came and did a lab with them, and everyone had nothing but absolutely wonderful things to say. So I'm just so proud of them. I'm like the big mama bear. I'm just super, super proud of how hard they've been working. And they're almost there. They're so close to being out into clinical rotations and living the life that they've been dreaming of. So
absolutely. Well done. Joe, we have a phenomenal repeat guest today. I want to introduce Dr. Andrew Lundquist back to Dean's Chat. Hi, Drew.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for having us on. We'll continue the first name basis and kind of a continuation. Drew, we had you back on our show about, seems like yesterday, but it was actually episode 132, and we covered a lot of ground. We covered your medical directorship, some of your inventions, your interface with NABLA and AI, and so we thought it was due time to get back together.
Yeah, let's talk. We got to catch up. It's been too long.
Absolutely, it's been too long. Lots of things to talk about. Joe, I thought I'd start off with talking about kind of the LinkedIn connection. Drew, as before we started the podcast today, I mentioned I feel like I know you. I see your posts every day. I post a little bit. We banter back and forth a little bit. Your background and your motivation for all the LinkedIn communications and discussions. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, because everybody enjoys it.
Well, thanks for that. I started doing LinkedIn a couple of years ago, and I think I'm not a social media person. I'm not on other things. I have a Twitter account, but I don't really use it. I found LinkedIn to be professional, and I found it to be something that allows me to connect with people and have better conversations. I mean, I think I threw a marathon post out there, and you chimed in, and now I know that we've run the same marathon. Not the same year, but we've run Grandma's marathon, and so it's fun to have those connections with people. I think it makes conversations better.
I think so too, and Joe and I have both noticed when we post things. Sometimes we'll post, or every week we post our podcasts episodes, but the ones that get the most interaction are like if there's a question or something unique, or it's just something a little bit different. I noticed that you take a lot of different angles to generate discussion.
The one that got some of the most comments for me was I posted in the winter. I posted a picture of a hockey scoreboard, and it was something that was historically been really stressful. I have 3 hockey kids, and when you ask parents to run the scoreboard, they're like, "No, I don't want to do that because I don't know how to do it. I might mess up, and people are going to be yelling clock at me." And I put that out there that it was the most stressful moment of my day. Even though I'm in surgery and I do other apparently big things. But that was the most stressful hour of my week. And I had so many people, CEOs reach out, me too. And it's just, I think it kind of helps to connect people. But to your point, I never know what's going to hit. I put some really smart stuff out there and it's just crickets. I post a picture about bread or a scoreboard and it brings people together. So I don't know. And I'm saying all that really smart stuff in jest because apparently it isn't.
Well, I think you're hitting on some interesting points with the scoreboard, because anybody, we all go about our professional day, and the second you coach a team or you're involved in something as a volunteer, for some reason everybody's antenna goes up and you're more at risk for having a little bit of criticism. So I think it resonated with a lot of people. Your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, one of the things I actually really appreciate, Drew, and I very much enjoy your LinkedIn posts as well, is this kind of the thought-provoking, the ways to stimulate conversation that don't have to be around a case. And it's nothing at all against people that post interesting cases. I love that too. But it's nice to talk to each other about things that are not cases. So I'd love to get some of your, like, how do you come up with it? Like, is it just in the morning? Do you have a consistency? Do you stack them? What's your workflow like?
Joe, I wish I could say that I had a perfect process of doing it. And on, Thursday is something and Friday is something, but I kind of stack them every now and then. But sometimes it's really just what I'm thinking at the moment. And I don't, I think it's better that way for me. I try to stay away from cases. Every once in a while I'll put something about cases, but I found that my career arc, I'm not going to be the one putting out the new way of doing something necessarily. But as I've kind of taken a turn into administrative side of medicine and the business side of medicine, I just see those things that are outside of what we normally go to CME courses for, to learn
Yeah.
the new techniques. And I find the new techniques and all of that. I think there's plenty of really smart people doing that, and they don't need me to chime in. So I try to talk about the other stuff.
Yeah. And I definitely I feel that. I see that very much. And so I'd love to get your take. You talk a lot about leadership and skill development, soft skills. We touched on this a little bit too the last time we had our dean's chat. I'd love to get your take on advice that you would give either a student, a resident, a young practitioner in how do they start building leadership skills?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think it's a process. At least it was for me. I have my oldest son is thinking of medicine, and he's in college, and looking at medicine as something that my kids may want to go into. I look at it as a really exciting time to be a part of medicine, healthcare, sick care, whatever you want to call what we do. I think there's a lot happening. It has to do with technology. It has to do with the way that people think about healthcare. I think it's opening up. It's not just going to your doctor. It's your diet. It's about your thoughts. It's about your mindset. It's about your relationships. Um, so back to your question about leadership is I think as a physician, I think when we start our careers, I think a lot of times, at least I didn't know that people looked up to physicians in the way that they do. I've been able to do so many things because I have doctor in front of my name. And so I think that we have to be leaders. I think we have to be talking. And that's one of the things, behind LinkedIn is that I posted a couple of weeks ago. Like, if you're not an influencer as a physician, you're not really a physician. Really trying to drive home the point of, we need to be out there saying things that are meaningful to patients, and also be leaders. So I think it's part of our job to be leaders.
It's interesting because being a leader is different in 2025 than it was in 2010.
Why do you say that? What do you think?
Well, I say that because everything's at our fingertips: communication, access to information. I mean, even our pharmacology course at the university is kind of redundant, right? When they've got their phone in their hands. And for Joe and myself and the other faculty, we spend more time on soft skills. To Joe's point, talking about getting along. Are you teachable? Are you going to be the friction in a group meeting, or are you going to add to it? All these little other skills are different on a macro level, because in 2010, I became a dean the first time in 2010. It was just a different landscape in terms of leadership. Everything was a little more local, if you will, not as
Mhm.
pervasive everywhere. And Drew, frankly, in 2010, our paths would have never crossed, probably, right? I mean, now look at everybody we interface with is absolutely incredible. So I think the leadership of driving a profession, driving education, driving medical directorship at multiple clinics, I just think it takes on a whole, perhaps expanded role than it would have been years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great point. And the two of you see students. What do you think it's going to take to lead that next generation of students coming into the ranks of doctors? What are you seeing as what they need from us as kind of the medical infrastructure, the medical leaders out there? What are they going to need from us?
We're hitting the hot buttons right out of the gates here, Drew. Joe, I'll let you take that because we've had so many discussions, and I'll add to it.
Oh man, you can see my smoking gun here where I'm like, I can hardly keep myself in my chair right now. This is such a timely discussion too, because I would say honestly, Drew, it's evolving. It continues to evolve, but there have been a couple of things that have become recurrent themes that I've been noticing. And even just having some of the residency directors that were here just, last week started to again kind of reshape how I look at what our role is in helping these young people not just build the life that they want, but how do we help them understand the repercussions of different decisions that they make? I'm going to elaborate a little bit on that. So this, I've said this before publicly, and I will continue with it. I think that this generation is fabulous in their understanding of clarity of what they want out of their life. What they don't have is experience to know how to navigate the world that they're going into. And so they know what they want in terms of work-life alignment. They have a very clear vision of what that looks like. But I think that it's important for us to help them understand what they're signing up for. Like, you have to be all in. This is not well, I'm going to go and approach residency from a perspective of I'm going to go and show up from 9 to 5 and I'm going to go home and do all the other things that I love in my life. And I'm not saying that they're wrong to have that opinion, but if they want to live the life that I ask them, tell me about let's start with the end in mind. Tell me what you want your life to look like. And that version versus I'm going to show up from 9 to 5 and then go home, those two, they're not in alignment with one another. So we have to help them bridge that gap. And honestly, a lot of it actually comes down to some somewhat difficult conversations that I wouldn't have expected to have. And it's not that I think that you need to sacrifice one part of your life for another. I think that's unfair. And because they have good clarity on what matters the most to them, helping them navigate those social norms of you don't show up to a program and you ask them, how much vacation time do I get? I want to take off to go surfing on my weekends. Like, how many weekends do I have to take call? That doesn't give the right perception. So how can we frame these concerns or questions or interests in a way that aligns with also getting excellent training? And honestly, it's been really interesting to hear their perspectives. They're not going into it necessarily with this vision of like, oh, well, I don't want to work hard. That's not it at all. I don't think they have a framework to know what that actually looks like or means until they get there. And so it's not really fair for us I was talking to somebody today to kind of hold their hand and again, I don't want to sound like a total jerk, but at some point we need to help them understand personal accountability and take ownership of their education. And that looks different for every student, and every student has different parameters and things to factor in. But that's really right now my biggest is like, let's get down to your end. What do you want your life to look like in 10 years? And let's figure out how you get there. And I tell them, I'm like, look, I'm going to take all the filters off. I'm a pretty transparent person. Like, you may not like some of the things that I have to say, and that's okay. But let's figure out where those gaps are and whether they are bridgeable or whether we need to consider things differently. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
You've had lots of difficult conversations.
Yeah, Drew, do you have a comment on that, or want me to chime in?
No, I want to hear what you have to say. I think that's timely, Joe.
So to add on to what Joe said, I think we had and this is so obvious, right? We had such a change with COVID. Drew, it seems like a century ago, it was 2019, and every student that was applying to podiatric medical school was making a trip to Arizona or a trip to Des Moines or a trip to New York or Temple or Miami and interviewing in person. And everybody's together, and everybody, in a 30-minute interview and then a day spent with students touring our campus and showing them what we have. There was a much better feel from the beginning, because you always, like to Joe's point, you got to start with the end in mind, but you got to start and you got to have a foundation. And in many ways, Drew, and it's not the students' fault, we're still training students that went through the COVID experience where they were taking organic chemistry from home, and they had a lab set sent to their home for them to administer a self lab, which is kind of like me doing self physical therapy on my own, right, without help. So I found it to be super challenging. I found the students to be, to Joe's point, they're brilliant, they're engaged, they're traveled, they're worldly, they've done mission work around the world. They're absolutely stunning in their potential, and I don't think they fully grasp their potential yet. And to Joe's point, we have to help them. We have to navigate with them. We need to help them get a vision of their future. And then Joe's right. Look at 10 years. But, I mean, right now, as we speak, Drew, we are sitting down with students every day talking about their opportunities for clerkships in their fourth year. This is with the third year students who just passed their boards. And those hard conversations are out of the gates. I've had students come into my office and say, I don't really want to work that hard. I want to get good training, but I don't want to go somewhere where I'm on call, 2 out of 4 weekends and it's round the clock. And I have to respect that, right? Or I have to reframe their position and just say, hey, the harder you work now, the more options you have in the future. And then sometimes I've gotten some students to reverse course on that. Others, though, like to Joe's point, you can put them in a room by themselves with crayons and they will be very successful. So there's that group too. But your original question was, how do we help people be successful in the medical field? I think perspective's part of it, understanding it's a new world. Drew, if I interview a student online, like we're talking right now, Glendale, Arizona, and our beautiful campus looks the same as anywhere in the world, right? Whether it's New York or Philly or anywhere. And they don't get that vibe, right? They don't get that whole scene of the academic environment that we fostered at the Arizona College. And then they may or may not come here to visit, and they may or may not come to our school here. So we're navigating that. And the best we can do is when the students come here, we do our best to train them up. And we tell them we're partners with them. The only difference between the students this year that showed up 3 weeks ago and us is we're a little further along in our journey, and got to treat them with respect and meet them. And we say, hey, you do your part, we'll do our part. And it's a great future for you. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think so. I see college age students that come through my clinics, and I'm usually having them shadow because they're thinking of podiatry school or medical school. And what I'm seeing more of is maybe that I think when I went into it, I had a healthy ignorance in just really knowing the ins and outs of what healthcare may look like. Maybe that was just me, but there wasn't all of the ways to be connected and to kind of get a glimpse of everything. And I'm seeing some of these kids that are very, very like upper echelon students. And I'm hearing like, maybe I don't want to do that. Like, I feel like maybe I'm showing them too much. Like, it's taken me, 20 plus years to get to this stage in my career where I can do these things. And I feel like sometimes they see the things that are done and they're like, yeah, I don't want to necessarily put in the work to do that. I'm okay doing something else. And I don't know what's causing that, or if I'm just seeing a little bit of an increase in that. But sometimes it's good to be a little bit ignorant of what you're getting yourself into. My residency was 100 plus hours. This was before all that. And it was, 13 days of being on call straight. And we didn't have orthopedics, so we took call for them. And it was like crazy busy, but I am so glad because I have a lot of skills that I wouldn't have had I not had to go through that and make decisions kind of on my own and that kind of thing. So if you'd have showed me that right away, I may have said no. But once you get into it and you have to do it, it's I think it's something that definitely grows you, Joe, to your point of, all right, if you want what you say you want, you're gonna have to go through you're gonna have to do some work to get it.
Yeah. And I think that's, sorry, Jeff.
No, go for it, Joe.
This is why I think it's such a fun, this is one of my favorite conversations to have with students. And again, I might come up, I really hope I don't sound like a total jerk, because usually the conversations go quite well, but it's okay if you don't, like, you can look at something and be like, I don't think that's for me. But to your point, Drew, you don't know what you're going to want in 10 years. What I want right now is drastically different than what I wanted when I was 25 years old, right? And so some of the things, again, talking with these students about, tell me what you think you want your life to look like in 10 years. What is useful there is, we're terrible at predicting the future as humans, but what we can usually kind of feel comfortable with is flexibility. Like, I don't know what I want in 10 years, but I know that I want options. So what do you want those kinds of options to look like? Because there is especially the way that medicine is going, and I'll come out and say it, it'll sound a little maybe like ego, and I don't really, it's what it is. If you want to do things like trauma and reconstruction and total ankles, you're going to do a fellowship. That's the reality of what the world, and by the time these students are out, that's what it's going to look like. And this is what I've had to start to kind of put my own perspective on is, 5 years ago, Drew, I used to be so much more general, talking about things like, oh, it's okay if you don't want to do that, or you don't want to do this, because you're trying to be like an even player, right? Like, you're trying not to push them in one direction or another. And the downside to that is they get a mixed message. The communication gets muddy, right? If it starts to come across like, oh, every program is the same, you choose where you want to go, we will support you. There is some truth to that, but the programs aren't all the same and the experiences aren't all the same. And that's not a bad thing. It's a fact. So what do you want this to look like? And let's build your life to support that, right? And I've just found that I need to be much more transparent in my conversations, because we've had some excellent students. And as we're talking, it just started to become really apparent. They want to do some of these things, and fellowship wasn't totally like, I don't really know if I want to do that. And the reality is, if you want to do that kind of practice, you will be needing to do a fellowship. So if you already know that's what you want, you need to start, because fellowships now, the interviews start second year sometimes. I mean, they haven't even had all their podiatry rotations yet in their second year of residency. So I feel like our young students need to start having mentorship and guidance to help them go through these discussions, because why would they have a framework to walk through what they want? And they don't need to have all the answers, but if we don't help them put the steps in the right order, then they are going to kind of stumble a little bit. And it's really only very recently that I'm starting to realize that I have to help give them a little bit more clear, directed communication, rather than like, here are all your options. That's very overwhelming for them.
Do you think that we have a good in podiatry? Do you think that so say a student doesn't want to do total ankles, doesn't want to do the major reconstruction that would take a fellowship. Do we have a good path for those who maybe don't want to do as much surgery, do you think? And the reason I'm saying this is that I don't think that podiatry should be advertised as everyone's a surgeon, because I don't think everyone should be a surgeon. I think there should probably be a path for podiatrists who want to do something else. Do we have a good path for that?
Was that? I shake my head no. It was kind of like reflex. Drew.
Yeah.
It's funny you mention that because we have task forces going on right now that APMA has sponsored that's looking back at Vision 2015 and the quest for parity and the 3-year surgical and medical residency program. And sometimes there's unintended consequences when you make everybody do the same thing with a vision of a similar equal ending. And it's funny you mentioned that because I've heard more and more discussions recently about why don't we have a dental model? Why don't we have a model where you can go out and be an office-based podiatrist, and then if you have a big surgical case come in as a new patient, you refer them to your partner or something. I'll probably be quoted on this somewhere, but nonetheless, I mean, it's a valid point, and I think it needs to be investigated, or at least develop a process to assess it appropriately, right? What are your thoughts, Drew?
Oh, I dislike the parity discussion so much. My theory is that if you have parity, you don't talk about it. If you don't have parity, you ask for it. And so
are you talking about parity amongst professions or parity within the profession, Drew?
Amongst professions.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Because I think parity sometimes when podiatrists talk about it, I think it comes across as that please let us have a seat at the table. When, from my perspective as CMO of a multi-specialty group, vast majority are MD-DOs. If you know your place, like every specialty has their place. The CMO before me was a psychiatrist. She knew nothing about surgery. Doesn't mean she was any worse than the surgeon. But she knew she had her blind spots. We all have our blind spots. So I think podiatry has parity if they would just take it, right? As long as you do your specialty as well as you can do, not stepping outside your bounds, that's parity, right? There's always turf wars, right?
Well, there's turf wars among everybody, to your point.
Yeah, right. So the parity thing gets me going a little bit, but because I think that if you're trained well, you have parity. You go and do your thing. Like you are going to be respected if you're doing the right thing and well trained. I don't think we need to go and ask for it unless there's those states that we have to kind of push those battles, and sometimes we do. But yeah, I think there's a lot there.
We all know that early detection is the most important determination in improving patient outcomes. Bako Diagnostics remains committed to supporting you in your role as the first line of defense in diagnosing lower extremity pathologies. Bako Diagnostics, helping podiatric physicians keep America on its feet. There's immense variability of training within the profession. And to that point, Christy King was commenting on that recently. And it's so true. I mean, you can't force equality on anybody or any profession. So I think we're going to have some growing pains for some years to come yet, Drew. What do you think about within the profession, the variability of training and the pathway you mentioned before?
I think it's good. So there's the nature of my career. When I came out of training, I thought that the ultimate echelon was to be an employee of a ortho group, because I don't think that I would have been able to have the career that I have. I think that there are, I decided not to kind of step up my surgical training and to kind of do things and then do the leadership thing. And that was something that was really good for my career. And I was able to make those steps because I stepped down the severity of cases. Like I just sent out a TTC nail today to one of my partners, and that's fine. I don't need to do that. There's someone else who can do that better. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities. And the thing is with healthcare being how it is with the technology things that we're seeing, the push in technology, I think having clinical skills plus technical skills of some sort, whether it's using AI or using technology or being able to work on workflows within healthcare, I think there are tons of opportunities for podiatrists to do those roles. I mean, we're seeing at Nabla, we just hired a second year pre-med, so a sophomore in college. Hired her because she's pre-med and she has an interest in AI. And so now she's going to have, a history of working at an AI company as she's going to apply for medical school. And she'll have that going on. So she will have, the two tracks of things. And I think looking at our careers as not necessarily just surgical training, very important. If you're doing that, you got to have the best. But there are these other skills, these other ways that we can use our clinical training and surgical training to really make a difference in patients' lives and in technology and in companies that are around us.
Well said. We've interviewed a bunch of podiatrists that have taken the road less traveled, so to speak, entrepreneurially. You're one of them. And it's always fascinating to understand their mindset and how, to your point, sometimes healthy ignorance is a good thing because we're all venturing into areas that are the unknown. I've oftentimes used the term irrational optimism. If you start your own company, you got to have that. Maybe we had that when we started the podcast. I don't know, but I'm with you on that. There's so many skill sets, and people's personalities take over, and lots of opportunity going forward. And maybe it's a good time to talk about AI, Drew. We kind of crossed that bridge. Joe, anything else you want to discuss on the leadership front before we?
I would just love to piggyback a little on that. And, we've talked on this before as well. And Jim McDaniel had a beautiful post about this idea of it's okay to lean into the things that you love. And maybe those are surgical, maybe they're leadership, maybe they're entrepreneurial, maybe they're innovative. You can lean into any of, maybe it's research, right? You could lean into any of those. And that's why keeping those options open and continuing to strive for excellence, what that looks like for you. Own your own excellence. You don't have to be, Dr. X's version of excellence. You can have your own version of that. But if we are going to, move forward, we need that ownership of what we are going to bring to the table. And so I appreciate that too, Drew. When you'll have these different questions or thought-provoking things that you'll put in terms of, just stimulating thoughts for anyone. Again, students especially, I think it's really useful for them to think about some of these things outside of just the day-to-day education. I do have one question for you that you touched a little bit on this idea of we can't be good at everything all the time, all at once. And so as you have shifted into leadership and innovation roles, how do you maintain this kind of balance, or how do you figure out clinical responsibilities without, losing your touch versus the amount of time that it takes to invest in these other areas of your life?
I don't know that we ever have balance. I
hate that word.
I definitely don't do it perfectly. But I think so. Christina Farr, she used to be a journalist and now she's a VC, and I follow her on LinkedIn, and she has really good, thoughtful things to say about healthcare. But she was talking about how, people ask her like what they should do with their career, what they should do to get out there. And she just said, well, you need to pick something that you can enjoy and do repetitively just because you like it. If it's not something you can do like that, don't do it. And so, I had something that I told my wife, that I think if we're not having fun doing what we're doing, then don't do it repeatedly. Of course, there's going to be some things that aren't fun, that are really meaningful, that you have to do, and having those hard conversations. But if you're not enjoying kind of what you're doing, you've got to find something else, and find something that, and I also don't agree with do what you're passionate about, because I think if you tell that to a kid, they're passionate about a lot of things that are a total waste of time. But you need to find things that are meaningful, that really kind of fill you with kind of that joy, and you need to figure that out. And I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for especially surgically trained people to really make a difference in other things outside of surgery and medicine.
Well said. So Drew, I've become pretty familiar with ChatGPT lately. And like after this interview, if I were to say, please give me a bio for Dr. Andrew Lundquist, yeah, I'd learn stuff about you that I didn't know in this discussion, right? I mean, it's so unbelievable. We talked last time, over a year ago, about advances that are happening very quickly in the AI space as it relates to charting medicine. What's the latest and greatest?
Oh boy, I don't know that there's anything that's super new that you don't know about, but I think the documentation thing, the discussions that people are having are completely different than they were a year, 2 years ago. When I was talking about it 2 years ago, people were scared of it. Now people are saying yes, and I want it to do this, this, and this. I want it to do coding. I want it to tell me the ATC scores. I want it to, go do a chart summary for me. I think people are really leaning into those things. And then the back office, the kind of the AI agent, which would be like an AI employee. Think someone who goes in and checks prior authorization or goes and checks on referrals. You can set those up to be done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, instead of having someone do that. So I think we're starting to see those efficiencies. I've been playing around with, there's this tool that will build websites just by prompts. So I think we're getting to be where you can do things that even like a year, 2 years ago took a lot of time and technical knowledge. There are tools now that you can tell it to go build a website about, comparing and contrasting the top 10 marathons in the country based on their elevation, their grade and it will go build you a website without you having to go do the research. So I think we're starting to see those kind of things, and this is going to just continue to be going for us. I think we're going to see those things that are just more automated, and those technical skills that we used to have for these things are going to kind of go away, just because you have the whole chat GPT, the agentic thing working behind the scenes. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot going on.
Sometimes if your ears are burning, Drew, it's because I'm quoting you from our last podcast when you said that some of the docs in your group are postponing retirement because charting's easier now.
We have had that. We had a psychiatrist who come in every Saturday and do his charts, and then we put him on Nabla, and we didn't see him on Saturdays anymore, and he doesn't feel like he's burned out anymore. There are a lot of stories. We also we did a study for a year before and a year after implementing Nabla. We did patient satisfaction and RVU generation from our providers, and they both went up about 8 to 9%. So people were more productive, and patients were more happy with them doing that, because historically sometimes we'd be more productive and patients would not like us as much, but these went up together, which was good.
Congratulations, Joe.
Yeah, it's nice when those two goals can align with one another.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to take the conversation in some of that direction, but first, maybe we hear a quick word from our sponsors, Jeff.
Absolutely. Let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Baco Diagnostics. We all know that early detection is the most important determination in improving patient outcomes. Baco Diagnostics remains committed to supporting you in your role as the first line of defense in diagnosing lower extremity pathologies. Baco Diagnostics, helping podiatric physicians keep America on its feet. We always give a shout out to Baco. Drew, they've been so good to our profession at every level, student, resident, practitioners.
That's good. I've watched them support you. I think that's great.
Yeah, they've been very good to us. And it's interesting. We work with Elizabeth and Shauna Shapiro. I knew her when I was a resident at Kern. She was in HR, so I've known Shauna for 30 years. So it's a small world, podiatric medicine.
I forgot that you were at Kern. Mm-hmm.
For sure. All right. Well, that's so interesting because I've even brought this up with students, Drew, and I said if there was one drawback to medicine the last 10 years, it's been the charting issues and the amount of time, at night, during the day, and weekends. It's not just seeing patients, it's charting. So this is opening up a whole new world for future clinicians. And I think it's advantageous for our students to know that the world is going to be better for clinicians because they're all familiar with the charting issues.
Yeah, and it's going to look totally different for them.
And that's what I'd love to get your take on is as you are watching some of this continue to develop and refine itself, what do you think is a good way for us to help teach students to anticipate how they can use AI as a tool rather than a replacement when it comes to things like critical thinking?
So that's there's a lot there. I think I think students have to be able to do it. It's kind of like, if I'm going to use a plate for my lapidus, I also need to be able to bail out and do 2 crossing screws if I can't get the plate to work. So you have to be able to do the charting on your own. You have to learn that, and then hopefully you can use AI to then do it for you, augment it so that you know what you're reviewing. The standard of that. So I think teaching them what they need to do and then showing them the tools that can make them do it faster or more, with more efficient, right? So I think there's a lot there. I was fortunate to be able to train under Sig Hansen, in Seattle, and he would tell us that, I kind of hope you're not doing things the same way that we do them in 5-10 years, because there'll be something different. Like, don't just do things because you were trained that way. And we've all seen those physicians out there who are 20 years out and they're still doing what they were trained, and they're antiquated, right? So you have to make sure that people are comfortable with the basics, comfortable with really the standards, and then they can kind of push the envelope from there with the tools. And they have to use them. And that's the good thing about a lot of these tools is you can try them, you can use them, you can play with them. And I think we have to give a playground for students to do that, because they're probably doing it on their own anyways. We had an interesting discussion with a company that creates like a ChatGPT type environment that's contained for an organization. So you could put like HIPAA compliant, you could put PHI in there, and it's not going to go anywhere. He says it's very important for especially clinics to do that, because if you tell them you can't do that, they're going to go and put it right in their phones, and then you've lost control of it. So you have to give people this playground to use these tools in a way that's safe and, meets all of the criteria that we have for everything. So give it to them. Otherwise they're going to do it on their own.
Yeah. It's a good point. We have students that are taking the PowerPoints for the basic science courses and dumping them into AI, and they're creating exam questions for practice. And sometimes the AI generated practice questions are harder than the ones on the test. So, they're creative. They're already working it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's all available at just the fingertips right now. So it's, yeah, for you educators, I don't envy you. There's a lot of gray area in dealing with that.
Yeah. Well, see, that's I actually think it's so much fun to be part of the education aspect, but that's probably not a surprise to anyone who knows that I get easily excited about a lot of things teaching related. But what I find really interesting, and I would love your perspective, Drew, so much of what we do as physicians is manage risk. And what we do know is that predictive modeling algorithms do help give us information. And now there's some that are even being used in hospitals, helping, deterioration indexes. Like, there's so much value that can come from this. And what I'm curious, and my husband's in tech, and I literally this morning we were talking about this because I knew we were going to have a chat, and I asked him and he told me that I'm just totally overthinking it. But I'm curious if the way that I use some of these, predictive models or ChatGPT, because I come in with experience and some degree of expertise, someone who's novice doesn't have that. Are they going to ask the same kinds of questions or prompts or probes to get to those places? And I'm curious your thoughts on how do we use it as a tool but also simultaneously teach critical thinking. And I do not have this mastered. I actually asked ChatGPT. It built me a whole curriculum on how to do it. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'll say what I think, and then I want to hear what your husband said, because he probably knows way more than I do on that. But I think it's a slippery slope,
Yeah.
and you have to make sure that you allow. And I think so. The prompt thing is something I've been thinking of recently. Also, is that you're, and especially with this tool that creates a website based on your prompt, it's really only going to be as good as your prompt. If you put in that are needed, it's going to be way better than if you just say something very simple. So, to your point, people have to have those critical thinking skills. They really do, because they have to understand what they want this thing to create. It's If you create something, it's create something. You tell it to create some criteria, it'll do that. So I actually was using ChatGPT to kind of create something for me, and then I'd tweak it, and then I'd put it into this tool. So it was like one level deeper than I thought it was going to be. So maybe people with prompts are just going to, put in a simple prompt and, make this way smarter than I am, right? And it'll do that, and then it'll go from there. But what did your husband say?
He said I was overthinking it, because what will just start to happen is people will get better at asking questions. And so it took my mind in a whole different place, that what I actually need to teach students to do is ask good questions, and then from that, they will start to learn how to, they already know how to think critically, but at the crux of critical thinking is curiosity. So how do I inspire curiosity and motivate them to ask better questions, more deeply probed questions, follow-up questions, to, again, drive the algorithm into the space where they're really trying to get clarity on something. And I thought that was fair. People always get overreacted about technology, like, oh, TV is going to ruin everyone. We're not going to have conversations anymore. And it didn't really do that. Social media helped more so ruin that than TV did. But there's always these fears, and somehow we figure out these workarounds that we get better at figuring things out. So I thought it was interesting, and I was curious your experiences.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said of having. I've always been a fan of like a liberal arts education. Because I think if you see a little bit of the arts and music and history, you can kind of see the different themes that are woven in there. And that just enhances everything that you're learning, because you see a little bit of all of that. And so I think, similarly to your point at the beginning of this discussion about working 9 to 5 and then just being done, these things, that you really need to see that going to allow you to connect the dots across disciplines, because connecting those dots across disciplines, I think, is where we are able to put those prompts in, and we're able to think and learn from people doing things outside of our discipline. That's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for students to see a little bit of everything. Like, if I hadn't had the plastic surgery rotation, I wouldn't be doing the closure that I'm doing right now, because everything's plastic surgery, even though it's not, right? So I think it's just so important for students, especially, and even us, to look at things across disciplines, so you can kind of connect those dots. I think that's going to be our strength.
Joe, I was thinking the liberal arts education and seeing things from multiple perspectives is a great segue into rapid fire.
Yes, because I don't think we were doing rapid fire the last, or maybe we just didn't get to it because we were talking about too many other things, almost like today.
So I'll kick it off. Drew, rapid fire questions. What's your next athletic endeavor?
Oh boy. I'm doing 100 push-ups a day with hopefully my son, until the end of the year.
Oh, good for you.
And hopefully other things, but that's just what I decided last night.
Quick story. One time I saw your LinkedIn post of your fitness routine. Can't remember exactly the post, but I was on my treadmill and I took a quick video of my treadmill, the TV, and my tonal. And I thought, I'm going to post this on Drew's site, and I forgot to do it, but I'm going to do it next time you put a post up about fitness.
Do it.
This is
Yeah.
that's my vibe.
Let's go.
You know? Okay.
Yep.
Your turn, Joe.
All right. What kind of music are you listening to during your workouts?
Oh, during my workouts, I'm not really listening to much music. But
Oh,
when I do, it's either Brandon Lake or country. The most played artist in our family right now is my wife and daughter went to a Megan Maroney concert. So I blame
okay.
them for having like teenage pop country in my head all the time. So I try to drown that out with something else.
Fair enough.
When you get away in the summertime, Drew, where do you take your family for a break?
We just went to Beaver Creek, Colorado.
Beautiful.
Oh,
We love going there in the summer. It's just a really good vibe. We were fortunate to have all three of our teenagers together. We finally got away and did that. But yeah, that's been a repeated trip for the last couple of years that we've really enjoyed.
all right. Are you a stay in and like hunker down movie style, or are you a go out and party kind of person?
A little bit of both. I have become
Okay.
more extroverted as I have gotten older, which is kind of weird because I like people more as I've gotten older. I used to be more of like a hunker down, almost like social anxiety, but that's totally gone. I've become more energized by people around me, which has been kind of fun.
Yeah.
That's interesting because a lot of people go the opposite direction, Drew. So,
I might. We'll see.
okay.
Give it some time. I might go back.
Well,
Have
it depends.
space.
Yeah, it depends on the responses and comments on LinkedIn, probably a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
Knock me
I
into
just
my
want to
shell.
tell Drew, I look forward to seeing your posts, and I don't know, you don't post every day, but I'll bet at least every other day. And I want to thank you because they're thought provoking, and you're part of bringing our profession together to have cool discussions about things that aren't necessarily clinical. And I appreciate it, and I know that all the people that see your posts appreciate it too.
Well, that's fun. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate to see just the community that's out there. I think it does us all good to put ourselves out there.
Absolutely. Joe, any last words?
No, thank you so much, Drew. It's just always so much fun. I'm looking forward to getting to meet you in real life somewhere, and then we can sit down and have a beverage and chat more.
I agree. Let's do it.
Thanks, Drew. We're going to send you another Dean's Chat cup.
Awesome.
So we're looking forward to, you can get your day started before your workouts with a little caffeine of your choice. If you're into that, I don't know.
I am into that.
Sounds good. Well, to all of our listeners out there, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating. We certainly appreciate you listening in each week. If you're watching on YouTube, please become a subscriber. Joe and I will continue to bring leaders in the podiatric profession and from every aspect of the profession. Drew, I love your eclectic work life, whether it's inventing things or medical directing or clinical or your social media. Thanks for all you do for the profession.
Well, thank you both for doing this. I think we have a richer experience by you all doing what you do. So thanks for doing it.
All right. So long, everybody. Have a great week. Cheers.
Cheers.